Eating disorders do not discriminate. And what I mean by that is any eating disorder, whether or not you're thinking of binge eating disorder or bulimia or anorexia or something else, can impact individuals of all ages, all sizes, all genders, etc. And no eating disorder has a particular look. Now, sometimes what people do is they think of anorexia and they picture a particular thing. Same with bulimia or same with binge eating disorder. But again, any of those eating disorders can impact someone of any age, any size, any gender, fill in the blank. They don't have a certain look. I think it's important that we talk about this today because a lot of times with eating disorders, people don't feel like it's bad enough to seek treatment. And that applies across the board. People may think that their binging isn't bad enough, that, oh, I only binge a couple times a week, or I only binge a couple times a month, so I'll be fine, I can fix this on my own. Or with bulimia, maybe they only purge occasionally, or even if they do purge frequently, they're able to convince themselves that it's not bad enough to seek treatment. It applies to any eating disorder across the board. I see it the most, though, with individuals with anorexia. Typically, individuals with anorexia who are really restricting their intake tell themselves that they are not sick enough for treatment. And oftentimes they tell themselves that because maybe their height and weight falls within a normal category, or maybe their physician has done some lab work and their lab work is fine, so they don't think that they need treatment. Or maybe they do eat a meal or two a day and they've convinced themselves that that's enough and they don't think that they need treatment. But that is not true. No matter how bad you think your eating disorder is or is not, it is worth seeking treatment. Even if it's something that is so sporadic. Maybe it's the case where you binge eat once every 3 months, it still deserves getting treatment. Anytime you're having those obsessive thoughts or any of those behaviors that could fall into an eating disorder category, it's worth seeking treatment. There's no such thing as needing to be sick enough. Now, I want to talk about a case study today real quick that kind of fits in with what we're talking about here. And this particular individual is someone who would technically be diagnosed with atypical anorexia. This person is severely restricting their intake, but falls into a normal height and weight category. So this particular person is 5'6", and at their initial weight was 155.7 pounds. I'll show you that body composition in just a second. And what we were seeing with this individual and why they came in to see us is because their therapist noticed that they were talking a lot about food, and it seemed like there was a lot of conversations around food and their obsession around food and their fear of gaining weight. And then when that therapist asked, what are you eating? The person finally said, oh, well, I really only eat a meal a day, sometimes less. So that's what led this person to come in to see us. There was actually no medical workup, right? So this person had been to their normal physician checkups yearly, but that person had never checked in on what their eating habits were. And because, again, their height and weight fell into that normal category and any lab work that had been done was normal, this sort of got overlooked. So let's take a look at that body composition. Now, as you can see here, like I mentioned, this person is 5'6", and their weight was 155.7 pounds when they first came in. Now, again, this person was severely restricting their intake, only eating a meal a day, sometimes a meal and a snack. But if we shake that out to how many calories this person was eating, it was no more than 1,000 a day. And actually, most days, it was about 500 calories or less. Now, this person, we of course put on a meal plan and tried to work on getting them to take in more, but they were really unsuccessful with doing so. That eating disorder voice was really, really loud. Those obsessions would just not allow this person to take in more food. This individual tried. They would make meals, they would sit there at the plate, and they just couldn't get themselves to eat the meal, no matter what supports we tried to put in place. So over this time period, from mostly February to April, we were really seeing that struggle of inability to take in more food. So starting in April, we talked about going into treatment, right? And ultimately, I'll just say by September of 2019, this person did end up in treatment, but it takes a long time. So that's why we see this February to August time period. However, from February to August, this person's intake, the highest it ever got was about 1,100 calories, and that was for a very brief period of time, no more than 3 weeks. For the most part, this person was eating about 500 to 800 calories a day, sometimes much less. Now, what you can see here is, of course, that scale weight looks almost the same, 155.7 to 155 over this whole time period. What we can see though is that lean mass has dropped significantly and that fat mass has gone up. That's because the body's compensating for being underfueled. The body is chipping away at that organ tissue and muscle. What we're seeing is this individual is getting weaker, less energy, hair's starting to fall out, skin is getting dull, because where the body is getting that additional energy is from all of those sources. The metabolic systems, your organ tissue, your muscle, all of those things your body is no longer prioritizing, and it's taking that energy in order to fuel you on the day to day. And that's what was happening with this person. Now, this always gets a lot of flack because people say this is impossible, there's no way. But I want to point something out specifically about anorexia. I know that there's this idea out there that people tend to underestimate how much they're eating, right? So someone will say they had, I don't know, a cup of pasta, but really they had 3. With anorexia, it's actually the opposite. They tend to overestimate. So someone would say they had a cup of pasta, but really they had a quarter cup or a half a cup. The other thing here is that a lot of times they lie about their intake in that overestimating sense, right? So they'll say, oh yeah, I ate this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner, but really they didn't finish any of those 3 meals. So whereas had they finished it, maybe the calories were 1,500, but when you find out that really they only had a couple bites of each of those meals, their intake was much lower. So we have to push out of our brains that idea that people who are logging their food are underestimating what they eat, because that doesn't apply with anorexia. So the case here is that this person unfortunately got overlooked in the beginning. We worked on taking in more food, but it really was unsuccessful, but weight still stayed about the same. So they were convincing themselves that they weren't sick enough for treatment. Ultimately, though, we had the conversation at the beginning of this video that I had with you guys, that it comes down to the obsession. It also comes down to the behaviors, and this person needed treatment and ended up in treatment for their eating disorder in September of 2019, which was an excellent decision. So here's your reminder that if you feel like you're struggling with obsessions with food, with exercise, or fear of gaining weight, or anything like that, please seek treatment. You are worth it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. We're so glad that you're here.